So I'm on the borderline walk because I was diagnosed with BPD about 6 years ago, or sorry, about 3 years ago. I've suffered for about 6 years with you know, mental health issues and depression. And I think the biggest reason that this borderline walk is important is because other parents and other caregivers, loved ones, whatever, I think have one of the biggest impact on people with BPD. I know other people with BPD who don't have the same supports I have, and unfortunately the only way they were really able to get help is, you know, go into an intensive rehab program or something, and that's terrifying and hard and really not fun. I've done inpatient programs, and I must admit they haven't been anywhere near as helpful as just the general support from my family and friends and understanding. And I think the more people that know about BPD and know how to, you know how to deal with people with BPD is going to help, you know, them and also the people who are suffering. So. I haven't actually. They went through the Family Connections program, like I said, to help me. I'm sort of familiar with the idea of it, but like I said, I haven't actually been through it myself. But I love the idea of it, just getting the word out there, getting, you know, people understanding. And I know a lot of people who I've actually recommended to them to look into BPD as a diagnosis. I've looked actually 2 people, and both those people asked their psychiatrist about it and were later diagnosed BPD and are getting some more appropriate help for it. And I think that's really, really important. I think it was mostly knowing when to step away, because my parents, you know, my whole face changed, my whole demeanor changes. You'll be able to see it when I go into that state where I'm really not in control of myself very much. They know to not push whatever the issue is that's made me get into that state. You know, they recognize that, yeah, we'll talk about it, but it doesn't need to happen right this second because we're not going to get anywhere. And I think that's really been one of the most important things is just learning at what point you just need to give me 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever, just to get back to my regular frame of mind, because it really is, you know, a little bit like bipolar in that you really do become a bit of a different person when you go through a angry episode or a depressive episode. And for me it's angry. I get really angry, and I just sort of lose sight of consequences. I lose sight of, you know, of the people I love and the things that I would never normally do. And so yeah, and I think being able to recognize that proactively is one of the most important things. I think DBT should be started in kindergarten and should be continued throughout the entire. I think it should be mandatory in the curriculum. And like my parents said earlier, it's what people need to understand is this is not just for BPD. DBT and CBT are skills that I recommend to literally anybody suffering with anything. Mental, you know, that is. Physical, obviously, they're not going to do much, but any mental illness, depression, you name it, I tell people to practice mindfulness, do breathing exercises, do whatever, because, and even people who are just stressed out in school, don't have any particular mental illnesses, they're all really, really great skills for absolutely anybody, and I think they should be taught all the way through school. I think it should be completely mandatory, at least at the elementary and middle school level. It gets a little more complicated to kind of push it on high schoolers because they become a little more independent. You know, recently getting out of high school myself, I know that those programs would be harder to enforce in high school, but start it early, you know, because those skills are and they're the kind of things that the earlier you start, the better you're going to get at them. So. Oh God, I mean, back to what we were just saying, I think, you know, the main initiative would be to teaching schools general awareness, but I think the biggest issue is, because BPD is such a new diagnosis and people are just starting to become diagnosed with it. I'm also one of the few boys who's been diagnosed with BPD, and they told me about 5 years ago that the diagnosis didn't exist. It was for women only. And so I think there needs to be more recognition, because I feel like when people hear the word borderline personality disorder, they feel it's very exclusive, it's a small group, you know, and it's not, and it's really, really not. There's so many more people suffering with BPD or BPD-like symptoms than people realize. And the other thing about BPD is it can manifest in so many different ways that it's sometimes hard to really, you know, is it BPD? Is it major depressive disorder? You know, like, so I think the biggest thing is awareness and just getting people in to see doctors if they think there's any problem and getting diagnosed, because that's where it starts. You know, my journey to recovery started with, general therapy and things for a while, but then when I was officially diagnosed with BPD, that's when I got into DBT and CBT, and that's when my therapy kind of really started. Because before then I was sort of, I was seeing therapists, I knew there was something wrong, but I wasn't really committed, I hadn't really accepted it yet, didn't really understand. And then there were other issues. There was addiction, there was anger, other depression, ADHD. I'm also 90th percentile gifted, and I was very frustrated that I couldn't get my work done, that I couldn't focus in school because I knew I was capable of it. Failing a test that you can do with your eyes closed if you were just there for the week is really frustrating. It really is, especially when, I know so many people who have so much to offer, and unfortunately their mental issues get in the way of that. And I think I think awareness is the first step to fixing those issues.